In film, narrative is shaped around the perception of the audience, in which the director has full control over what is shown. The way a shot is lit and edited could change everything about how an audience feels towards a character, scene, or an entire film. Thriller films revolve around this idea of changing perceptions and large plot twists. This is done significantly well in Alfred Hitchcock's 1941 suspense thriller film Suspicion and Bryan Singer's 1995 film The Usual Suspects. Both films use a variety of components such as motifs, angles, persona that inherently manipulates the audience's emotion and perception. These films were chosen for their socioeconomic and technological context. Suspicion is set in the year 1938 around an affluent family in England. Our protagonist, Lena, suspects her husband of trying to kill her for insurance money. The audience sees Lena's paranoia through different angles and motifs. Contrastingly, The Usual Suspects focuses on 5 American criminals from very different cultures and backgrounds. The director uses visual and narrative manipulation into what our narrator, Verbal Kint, wants the audience to believe. The two films are linked in a way that displays suspense by manipulating the audience into believing things that could possibly be false, whilst showing different ends of the socioeconomic classes. For example, The Usual Suspects displays the corruption of the police in America, as well as the increase of crime rate during the 90s. Hitchcock is known to manipulate his audiences into thinking the same as his protagonist. Hitchcock was aware that if he wanted the viewer to feel anxious, it doesn't matter what the subject matter is as long as it's shot and edited in a certain way. Specifically, in Suspicion, we are brought into the world of Lena, who believes that Johnny, her husband, has killed his business partner and is plotting to kill her. Lena's paranoia becomes evident through musical motifs. The waltz Wiener Blut, composed by Johann Strauss, is a representation of Lena's love for Johnny. However, when she starts suspecting him of committing murder, it begins to play in a minor key. This is shown throughout the film when Lena and Johnny interact. Perspective plays a crucial role as we only see Lena's perception of the things that go around her. This is a way to manipulate the audience as the camera stays with Lena while we get glimpses of Johnny and his actions, but we never enter the scene, creating a perfect setup for a film. The director shows as much as he can in the protagonist's perspective, but still only enough so that the director can still create suspense. Hitchcock creates an image that Lena has for Johnny, and the audience follows that perception. Johnny is seen as someone irresponsible, as he is a penniless gambler relying on Lena's family for support. This sets the base for future events where Lena makes assumptions about Johnny's actions.
Oh, well, if we gotta go, what time do we have to start? Now, if I had an I could make that murderer.
The earlier the better. I'd say about 7 o'clock.
Hitchcock uses these scenes to convincingly control the audience to believe that in fact Johnny is plotting to murder Lena. Similarly, in The Usual Suspects, Verbal Kint is portrayed as a weak character that is pitied by the viewers. He seemingly gets manipulated by the other characters throughout the film. This in turn manipulates us, as the ending reveals that he was the mastermind behind the heist, controlling every thought and move throughout the story. This is also viewed as a reflection in the real world, as it is our human nature to judge someone based on their physical appearance and characteristics. After seeing Verbal Kint's behavior as a character, the audience would automatically make the assumption that he is not a significant character in the film. Examples such as the way Verbal walks, how he cannot shoot a gun, and his inability to light a cigarette was a deceiving gesture Bryan Singer used so that the viewer would never associate verbal kin with Kaiser Soze. Sudden realization is a hallmark in thriller movies, making the audience believe things that are not true. For example, Lena's realization that her husband might be a murderer, or verbal reaction upon finding out that Dean Keaton is Kaiser Soze.
It was Keaton. Immunity was your reward.
But why me? Why not Fester or McManus or Hockney? Why me? I'm stupid. I'm a cripple. Why me?
Because you're a cripple, Verbal. Because you're stupid. Because you're weaker than them.
These scenes, as the viewer later finds out, are all not true and is just a technique the director uses to later on doubt our protagonist, questioning everything we see to make the movie overall more interesting. Through the retelling of the story from Verbal Kin's perspective, Verbal is able to manipulate the audience into believing what he wants us to. Similarly, in Suspicion, the director uses subtle hints and a buildup of character to display Lena's suspicion of her husband. Overall, Suspicion and The Usual Suspects are great thriller films that have the ability to manipulate their audiences through a character's perception and what we as spectators want to believe.